And there are other prophets in the Bible who try to prop up and justify current reality by insisting that things are just fine the way they are. The royal prophets and the prophets of Baal. The current debate over health care in this country has lots of both kinds of prophets. And the messages are not always easy to distinguish. We've heard some who remind us that health care and healing should be available to all who need it. And we've heard some who want to tell us that it's going to be expensive. How we sort out those messages has something to do with where we think the goal lies. Is it about healing more of the sick? Or is it linked to budgets and bank accounts? Or does it perhaps have something to do with both? Yesterday, I read a friend's account of life in the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific. He is the recently retired Bishop of Malaita in Melanesia. And he talks about the land that is disappearing from those islands, most of them just barely above sea level. Storms there are fiercer than they used to be, and storm surges and high tides are higher. And the land on which his people live is eroding and slowly sinking beneath the sea. Most of those Solomon Islanders make their living from the sea, and they grow some limited staple crops in the sand just above tide line. Their ability to maintain their culture is disappearing, along with their ancestral homelands. They and others like them are becoming environmental refugees. Terry Brown's account has words of challenge at the end about how both we and the Solomon Islanders share the responsibility for greenhouse warming because of the fossil fuels we use. But he also notes that the wealthier nations of the world have a greater responsibility to change because we have a good deal more of the resources. In the long run, we can all enjoy a more abundant life if we're willing to change. But prophets aren't just oceanic bishops or Old Testament firebrands. Prophetic work is part of our baptismal vocation. You remember those words. Will you persevere in resisting evil? Will you proclaim good news in word and action? Will you strive for justice and peace? Every time we speak about injustice, or the need for healing, or for reconciliation, we are both speaking in God's name, and we're pushing for progress toward God's vision. Loving our neighbors is intimately wrapped up in the prophetic work of telling the truth of what is and what ought to be. The ability to tell those hard truths has something to do with courage, as Mother Ann started her prayer last night, talking about the gift of prophetic courage in this congregation. And the ability to do that has something to do with the deep connectedness to God and to all of God's creation. The courage that St. Paul's had right after the Second World War, when you challenged others in this community to contribute to rebuilding churches in Europe. The courage that people here had to say no to Harry Bird's program of massive resistance to integrated schools. The courage you had to host a prayer vigil during the Vietnam War. The courage you have to name the names of those who die in Iraq and Afghanistan. The courage you have to keep on saying yes to all comers in this community. Your next 100 years will be built on that kind of courage to speak truth, to pluck up and pull down human structures of injustice, and to build and plant a community of peace. prophets as long as you notice the hungry and figure out how to feed people. As long as you reach out to students who might not otherwise get here to the University of Virginia. And how about inviting some from Haiti or Liberia to apply for those Skinner scholarships? The vision from Isaiah that Jesus holds up as his own mission statement, that truth he proclaimed that nearly got him lynched in Nazareth, is the courageous truth we share. A healed and healing world. Prophets may be quaking in their boots, like Martin Luther King the night after his house was bombed, but they keep on speaking, and they keep on moving toward God's perfection. May your words and your deeds be bold.